Welcome to the Mothering with Jesus podcast, where we are real and raw about the ups and downs of motherhood and where we rally together to become the mothers that God intended us to be. I'm your host, Layna Massey, and this week's guest is Lydia Engamann. And wow. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this one. This is so good. Lydia is a health coach, and she works for a company that uses all sorts of data and information and tests in order to help you feel good. The company is called More Energy, and I will leave all of Lydia's information in the show notes so you can connect with her if you want and use her awesome skills and services. So today we talk a lot about health, and beforehand I was thinking that we were just going to be talking, about physical things that we can do to be healthier and take care of our bodies. And then this conversation really took a twist, and we talked a lot more about the emotional and spiritual side of our health and how that affects our physical side. And I am so excited for you to hear this and feel of Lydia's light and goodness. It was fantastic. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are loving this podcast, don't forget to leave us a review. And if you have any questions or comments, you can always text us. This episode is brought to you by Ayurveda. Thank you so much to all my wonderful clients who have purchased through me. I really appreciate your business. And this is how I keep the podcast going, is by using my earnings from Ayurveda to purchase my software and all the things that I use to keep the podcast rolling. So I really appreciate it. Ayurveda has changed my skin drastically. It has helped so much with hydration. I used to have a very flaky forehead, and now it is hydrated and doing well. So I have really loved that. I also have noticed a major difference with just my pigmentation and acne. Overall, my skin just feels so much better. So reach out and let me know if you have any questions. And you can look in the show notes to purchase and get your glowy skin on. All right. Welcome, Lydia. Thanks for being with us. So tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Lydia Engamann. I'm originally from Utah County. Now we live in Washington County. I have 3 daughters, married, and we love just being outside. That's why we moved down here. We love the heat. So I work for a health company up north. It's called More Energy, and we bring people in and we do a series of tests. So we do metabolic testing with the RMR machine, we do VO2 max testing, we do DNA testing, we do blood labs. And then I get to kind of work one-on-one with all these people by creating health plans. We talk about fitness, we talk about nutrition, we talk about a lot outside of fitness and nutrition, and just try to help people move closer to their goals using all of these different data markers. So I'm a certified health coach, personal trainer, functional health coach, have a bachelor's degree in community health with an emphasis in health education. So that's me.
Wow. Amazing.
Thanks.
Love all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds so cool, this company that you work for and what you guys do. And who would you say like your clientele is?
Yeah. So for the most part, we get menopausal women. So like women in their 50s, 60s. The other cool part about the company is that we'll run them through our health program, and then we'll do like international adventure trips. So there is this community aspect, and these women kind of in this age demographic. It's just been cool to see this community form, and then they, go travel the world, which is cool. So yeah, cool. Menopausal women is kind of the primary demographic. However, I do work with some males, like business executives,
Mhm.
CEOs, lawyers. We've even done some professional pickleball players in the state. I've done youth
Cool.
athletes. So really, I've worked with a handful of different people, but for sure that menopausal woman is the
Oh,
prime suspect.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that, but it makes sense because that can be such a rough time,
Yeah.
from my understanding.
I feel like they're finally at a time in life where they're investing in their health, and they probably have a little bit of excess money or extra money to
Yeah.
spend. So yeah, it's fun. And it is funny because I obviously have never been through menopause. So I'm forced to learn a lot about that stage of life. And
Yeah.
it's cool because now I'm learning a lot that will help me, when I finally get there. So it's fun.
Yeah, for sure. And set yourself up for a successful
Yes.
menopausal time.
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So tell us, so I think you were an athlete in
Mhm.
high school and
Yep.
college.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. What
I
did you
played
play?
soccer.
Oh, cool.
Soccer. Yep. Uh-huh.
So you have just, been in the fitness world,
Mhm.
probably your whole life.
Mhm.
And tell us like what a typical day looks like for you. What are you eating? When are you squeezing in time? It's such a busy time. I know your oldest is 6 or 7 now.
She's 6. Yeah.
And so you've got 6 and down. Like this is such a busy time and you're
Mhm.
working. How are you
Mhm.
doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I, like many other mothers, struggle. When I guess like going back a little bit to when I was just like how I got so passionate about health and fitness. Um, I I was born kind of a sick kid. I got C. diff in the hospital, which is a nasty little bug that can sometimes kill elderly people. So I got it as a newborn.
Oh, scary.
Um, I got put on antibiotics that were really helpful, but also just kind of tore up my gut.
Hmm.
And as I grew up, I had a lot of joint pain, skin issues, stomach pain, all the things. So out of desperation, after seeing a lot of doctors, found out I should probably go off of gluten, which back then when I was about 15, like we know so much more about that now. But that was again like the first catalyst where I'm now forced to figure out some things with my own health. Unfortunately, because of the restrictive nature of that, I also developed some eating disorders, and we can talk about that later. But I've really been on this long journey, and I've seen a lot of the things that were detrimental beliefs and behaviors. So yeah, like a lot of people, I'm still trying to figure out what works best for me. So I think 5-10 years ago, I probably a typical day would have looked much differently, and maybe it would have been a lot more meticulous on what I was eating. Maybe a little bit more aggressive and intense with the exercise.
Hmm.
And now I think because I've learned what I've learned, it is a little bit more gentle. And so I guess a typical
Love
day,
that.
I wake up, send little kindergartner off to school, and then we come back, and sometimes I'll do a morning workout while my kids eat breakfast. And when I'm ready for breakfast, I'll eat, and then we just go into, I don't know, just like kind of fun day in the morning. And I usually start work. I take one-on-one client calls most of the afternoon while my girls are either entertained, playing, painting, playing with toys, whatever, or
Hmm.
napping. And then after 4 to 5 hours of work, kindergartner comes home from school. We try to spend as much time outside as possible, which makes me happy and my kids happy. And
Hmm.
then
I think that's
husband,
like such a big mom hack. Like get outside every day.
yeah.
And it
Oh,
can feel
yeah.
really hard to get outside because like with you being in charge of the home, like there's just it's endless, right? Like you could
Yeah.
literally clean and organize and cook literally all day.
Yeah. And drive yourself mad doing all that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So stop for a couple minutes and get outside.
I know. Well, and I have learned that like that has a direct correlation on my mood and my ability to feel like a Zen mom.
Hmm.
So yeah, we just try to spend as much time outside. And if that takes us from the late afternoon all the way till sun goes down, then that's an ideal day. In the
Yes.
meantime, husband, comes home, and then we do dinner, we get ready for bed, and then we do it all again the next day. So that's
Love
probably the
it.
most typical day.
Do you do anything specific for your diet? Are you macro counting or anything like that ever?
No, no. So, yeah, back in the eating disorder days, I would track everything in MyFitnessPal religiously.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is, if you can do that without a trigger for disordered eating, I think it is a very beneficial practice.
Yeah.
To bring awareness and intentionality in what you're eating. So
Yeah, I
if
was gonna say the same thing. Like it just helps you be aware. I don't track. I do every once in a while, like after a baby and I'm, trying to
yeah,
lose weight,
yeah,
then I'll like hone back in on how much I'm eating or whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but yeah, I think that like intermittent fasting and macro counting, if you have a tendency to have an eating disorder, that can be a really easy thing to push you over the edge if you're not careful.
yes, exactly. And I will in health coaching, there's a lot of nuance. So, one tool can work really effective for some person and then be very detrimental to another person. And so I think it's just,
Yeah.
when do you play the card or use the tool effectively? But no, as of right now, I don't track. But I also do know, a lot of the guiding principles for good nutrition. And that's just what dictates my choices. I try to go a little bit lower on dairy just because my body just doesn't love it. And then some nuts and things, but none of those things I would tell everybody that they
Everybody. Yeah.
avoid. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I love what you said, just that like there's a lot of nuance and there's no one size fits all, as
Yep.
far as diet or exercise. Like I just I think in like the Instagram space, there's a lot of like everybody do this and
Yeah.
everybody do this and like debunking something that someone else said of like this is just very black and white. And I really think that our bodies are so individual. And
Mhm.
it's just crazy
Yeah.
how exercise and fitness is viewed so straightforward.
Yeah. And maybe we can dive into this
Mhm.
because I think that this is probably the topic that I'm the most passionate about in life right now. And it really is this like dogma versus nuance. Really with anything, but especially in health and fitness and nutrition. Um, I've actually taught a handful of like classes lately on this, but in like you hit it spot on. There's a lot of debunking. There's a lot of social media videos where people will say like, "This is the thing, and everybody should do it." And I feel
Yeah.
like in a gospel comparison, I feel like um, if you believe that there's, sometimes like the one true church, sometimes it's easy to think that there's going to be the one true diet and it's going to
Mhm.
be, there's this perfect thing and you just haven't figured it out yet. And you just, like if things aren't going the way you want, it's because you just haven't found that one perfect diet yet. And this
Yeah.
is where people will bounce to all the extremes of like veganism or keto or paleo or carnivore or whatever, because there is this dogma thinking that it's like black and white, good or bad, type of thing.
Mhm.
So a lot of people will end up having a positive experience with one of these, true diets. And then they get stuck thinking that that's also what that everybody should be doing it or
Yeah.
that they need to be doing it forever too.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it's like there's certain tools. Even as a coach, I'll put people sometimes like we'll try out some of the principles or strategies from some of these camps, but rarely, forever. And
Yeah.
again, I feel like there's context and individual variation that just matters so much. So I think really the primary goal for me and anybody I work with is like, let's just find that beautiful balance where, you are open to trying other things and we're paying attention to all the nuances and just seeing how your body responds. And also, letting science be the guardrails a little bit to give us suggestions in the beginning, but then ultimately, like, let's just see what works best for you. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. And so what would be your advice to young busy moms? How should they stay healthy?
Yeah, it's a loaded,
Just
such
like
a loaded
very obviously,
question.
yeah, it is loaded because we're just talking about how individual it is, right?
Mhm.
Like I personally have always exercised and um I was in sports in high school and loved being physically active. And then with every baby, I just feel like my life has gotten progressively more stressful.
Yes. Yep.
And this fourth baby has just brought me to my knees in so many ways.
Yeah.
And physically, like I was just feeling awful, like could not lose my pregnancy weight and just I'm just like in the thick of it. And so like I have gone to a doctor and there's like I love the holistic health space
Mhm.
and I follow a lot of different people and have read multiple books and kind of deducted a few of my symptoms and assumed I had different problems or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but just like you said, like using the science, it has been so helpful to go to a doctor
Yeah.
and just get my personal blood work done and realize exactly what I need to be focusing on.
Mhm.
Um, and so that has been awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
props to you for going on that journey because
mm,
I think even, like, finances or the time commitment will sometimes scare people away from, like, getting personalized
yeah.
help. Yeah, and doing the
Yeah,
tests.
and I think it can be tricky too because like if you're wanting to really heal and get better, um it takes a lot of work.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not just like you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to be like, "Oh, here you go. Take this
Yeah.
and this and you're golden." Like
Mhm.
my doctor has me on a very strict diet for the moment and taking a bunch of supplements. I'm not allowed to exercise, like I'm not allowed to run anymore. I just have to walk for 40 minutes a day and I have to do my strength training
Yeah.
and like just has totally flipped like my fitness on its head. Like I had been running there for a little time and doing more like I don't know. I don't know if they're necessarily HIIT workouts. It's just like the Wilma app. I don't know if you know Meg
Oh,
Miles.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll do a little shout out to her because I love the
Shout
Wilma
out to
app.
Meg. She's
Yes,
adorable.
she is so very fantastic. But I have done her Wilma app for like years and years, like ever since my first was tiny, because that was such an
Mm.
easy way to get in an exercise and I didn't have to think about what I was doing. And she just does it along with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I would say hers are a little bit like higher intensity than I
Mhm.
need right now because
Uh-huh.
I'm recognizing that I have to just like try to bring everything down and
Yeah.
settle down my hormones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can jump into this too because I feel like you are in the camp of, like, a lot of moms too. And where to begin? So, kind of with the advice of what advice would I give, to especially, like, the young, busy mom? Um, one of the things so, in the world today, we kind of have, like, the natural sciences that we use the scientific method, right, and like try to find these recommendations for the general public. So, nutrition, exercise science, chemistry, medicine, like these are all things that are telling us a lot about how different people respond. And again, there's always going to be outliers in any of these studies, but again, they do kind of give us some good recommendations.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of like learning and being informed in all of the natural sciences. Then on the other side of this, and because I can talk about this on this particular podcast, there is this whole other side of being a person, which is the spiritual, the emotional, that isn't always like studied um, in the
Mhm.
natural sciences. So we're we're at a disadvantage in the world today where there's not really like a good bridge to gap
Mm.
our spiritual health and like the physical health and all the science that we have
Mhm.
access to. But we know that we're like a whole soul, your emotion, spirit, and physical body, right? And so as as a young mom, one, and we do find this in the research a lot, but we're starting to know more and more that our stress and our perception of all the stressors around us totally impact our physiology, totally impact our well-being. And so when you only listen to the advice and the scientific community, you may, burn yourself out with exercise, and you may be just challenging your body, doing all the running, doing the HIIT, doing the strength training, which none of those things inherently are like good or bad. It's just the way that we use them, right? Um, and then, yeah, the flip side of that is that if we're doing too much and not like fueling ourselves and not taking necessary time to recharge and connect with God, like you can totally burn yourself out and be totally unwell. So you could even be doing all the right things physically. But then, yeah, if you're frustrated. So one of the things that I will always talk to people about is just some of these emotions that kind of like plague them. And I think young moms, again, we put a lot of expectations on ourselves, whether we do it or the voices that we're listening to will put a lot of like pressure on us and make us think that there's these expectations that we need to reach. So with young moms right now, there's a lot of, pressure to maybe, and again, depending on what voices you're listening to, maybe it's like be a stay-at-home mom, but then also the pressure to like work and make money, or it's to like be very present with your kids and play with them, but also like, do all this me time and exercise and do all the meal prepping and all these things. So it's kind of hard to find like what health looks like when you're a young mom and raising kids. So physical health and spiritual health and well-being like totally go hand in hand. There and so Ellen Langer is she's a doctor doing research at Harvard. She just had a phenomenal podcast episode come out on the Huberman Lab podcast. She's been on some others too. Totally recommend her. I am such a Ellen Langer fan because she's one of the only voices. She's really a pioneer in the scientific community, bridging like mind and spirit with body.
Okay, cool.
And so I totally recommend anybody listen to her, because you will now, a lot of the studies that she just kind of turns science on its head, where these people will maybe, do some of the things that science has told them to do, but depending on their perception and their belief about that thing will determine how their physiology actually responds. So cool. It's a lot of like placebo effect stuff. And so we know we're continuing to learn that our mind will change the way that our body responds in our physiology. So going back to just like our spiritual health, if we have resentment, if we have anger, if we are frustrated, feel like we're in darkness, whatever this will impact your physiology and your overall health. And so I guess the long-winded advice to the young moms is you have to you can't put all of your eggs in the basket of just like physical health. Like you have to make sure, and I would even say more of the focus goes towards healing and getting well from the inside out.
Love that.
And I guess the little caveat there is that we can't totally like think and believe ourselves well. Like you could go, we lived in Florida for a little bit, in like a retirement community, and you could have the sweetest, most wholesome elderly people that have probably lived a good life and have figured out how to overcome the resentment and the anger, the jealousy, the envy, whatever it may be. But if they have not been exercising, like they could be unwell, right? Like they could have a bent over posture. They might not have the strength to do activities of daily living. So there really is this importance of taking care of the physical body and absolutely prioritizing our mind and our spirit and all that. So
Mhm. Oh, I absolutely love that. I think that is missing from a lot of the health talk, right? Like we
yeah,
don't talk so much about spiritual and emotional health
yeah,
um, in conjunction with like the physical, and they are one. They're so connected. It's fascinating. I love what you said there. One thing that's really cool about like digging into your spiritual health and your emotional health is like as you draw closer to God, then he is the great doctor, right?
yeah,
And like he shows you what you need to do. And as I've, ran into some health things the last just couple of years, it has been really neat to see how much God cares,
yeah.
how he really wants us to feel well,
Hmm.
you know? And like it is a privilege to take care of our bodies and to have our bodies.
Hmm.
And it's so neat that as we draw closer to him, he knows exactly what's going on.
Yep.
And you said like props to me for going to the doctor. Like I was just sitting in the temple one day and felt very strongly that that was my next move. That's what needed to happen. Like I needed to actually go figure out what was going
Yeah.
on with my
Yeah.
body. I needed um the
Western
science.
medicine. Yeah, you need the science, you need the help. And I think that we sometimes do ourselves a disservice by thinking that like, priesthood blessings and God's power uh will do everything for our health, when really, like, I
Yes.
think knowledge and medicine and all these things, like, God, I think, has inspired the world to and has given us so many tools, and sometimes the inspiration can be like, yeah, go see a doctor.
Yeah.
um
Yeah,
so
definitely. And he expects us to do the work, like
yeah.
he's not just going to magically make us well. That's just and he's not going to he doesn't do things like that generally speaking. Like he
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
generally speaking, he's going to make us work because it helps us learn so much as we're
Yeah.
going through it with him.
Yeah, well, and maybe I can share just like a little bit of my experience too, because when I had so obviously was told by my dermatologist, funny enough, to go off of gluten after like years of, I had flat warts that would like come up all over my face, weren't going away. I was in 8th grade
Oh
at the
man.
time, so insecure.
Yeah, it's so
And
hard.
um, again, like I'm playing high school soccer and my joints are hurting. And at the end of, one game, I would, there'd be like varsity and JV, and I'm just seeing my friends just like keep running around. And I'm like, I am bawling because my knees hurt so bad. So I'm just like in a lot of pain. Anyways, my
Mm.
dermatologist is like, hey, you have symptoms similar to my daughter, go off the gluten. Anyways, I did that, felt astronomically better, kind of continued on with that. Again, then uh, got into more diet and nutrition information, um, kind of turned me a little orthorexic, which is a lot of that dogmatic thinking, like food is good, bad. You put all these food rules and labels on food.
Okay.
Was orthorexic, then that turned into anorexia, and then turned into bulimia. And while I was on my mission, I still was struggling with bulimia. And I asked for a priesthood blessing from one of the senior missionaries that I was serving with, and gives me a blessing. And then there's kind of this long pause. And in the blessing, I'm told that I need to mend relationships with my family at home.
Hmm.
And it was just like such a bizarre moment to me, because I felt the spirit very strongly, but I was also very confused. Like, what? I love my family. I have really great relationships with my family. Um, but it was this first like moment where I'm like, wait, is what I'm struggling with more tied to like my emotional, is
Mm.
this something that's deeper than just wanting to be thin, or, having all these like food addiction type things. So went on a journey I like wrote letters to all my family. I'm just trying to think of like, what are the things that I even have issues with you on, but I wrote every member in my family a letter. And just so that listeners know, like, I seriously love my family. I have amazing parents, siblings. But it was a very healing experience because I did, I guess, start to find like maybe some resentment or some frustration, and maybe some issues with my own worth and my identity, and maybe just like little comments over growing up that I meant to mean more than they needed to
Mhm.
mean. So that was kind of
Uh,
a start. And then coming home from my mission, and maybe this is because I was an athlete too, but I always want, and this was a kind of an identity issue. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to impress my coaches. I wanted to impress the people in the stands. I just wanted to be the best. So even like after soccer practice, I would keep training. And then after my mission, it was just like, I just got to keep training and go hard to the point where I am now have hypothyroidism. I have autoimmune symptoms like crazy, feel like trash again. So I've now kind of like helped some of the emotional stuff, but now I'm having
mhm,
issues again. Also go to a doctor and he's like, Lydia, you need to stop just running from the tiger. You're under eating, you're over exercising, you're overstressing. And again, this all was kind of rooted in this belief that I had about myself that I needed to, that my value was and my worth was tied up in impressing people and pleasing people and like
mhm,
what they thought of me. So then I go down this journey of like, I really got to just change my belief about myself and that expectation that I have for myself. And so then once I could really finally work on that, just the disordered exercise and the disordered eating, and with the power of God and through prayer and fasting and the Book of Mormon, all of that, like it started to line up and become so much better. So anyways, I have just had these experiences that keep telling me sometimes the physical, what we're doing physically, the way that we eat, the way that we exercise, may have this root that is rooted in a belief about ourselves. And again, these expectations and these pressures that we put on ourselves. And maybe this is a little bit of a bias of my own, but even with the clients that I work with, again, even some young females and the menopausal women, you will find that a lot of us are struggling with self-worth, doubts about our self-worth, and these stories that we've created about ourselves and these narratives that we tell ourselves, and again the pressure that we put on ourselves. And as somebody who's like listening to people talking to me, sometimes it's clear as day, like, we don't even need to track calories, we don't even need to focus on your fitness, like we really need to kind of focus on these big players, and if we can sort those things out, then it usually does manifest in different eating and different movement and moving out of joy and all of that.
cool. I love that. I love that you bring that up because we are just in an interesting era
Yeah.
where there's just so much coming at us.
Mhm.
And, like if you spend any amount of time on Instagram, like you just get all sorts of messages. And like I think even outside of that, like I mean everybody in life has to figure out who they are and figure out, like their value here. And I do think that the whole social media scene just adds this whole nother dynamic and
Yeah.
level to that. um and we've seen that a lot with the youth, and heard a lot of people speak out about how maybe they shouldn't be on social media because they're not ready for it yet. And I think there's got to be something to that, because I think even as young moms, or people, as we're moving out of motherhood and going through all these different stages, we're seeing like so many people were like right into their life
Yeah.
about how they're doing it.
Yeah.
And it may not be 100% truthful, or it might be, but it just is like just something that I don't think our parents or ancestors had, just like seeing that closely into people's lives and being like, oh, they're doing motherhood this way. And maybe I need to be doing, something different, and just not leaning into what comes natural or what your specific gifts and talents are and things.
Yeah.
So I love that. And your story is really awesome. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. What, as you like work with women and as yourself, as you know, you said you had to work on your um, emotional side, where do you start? How do you start to gain confidence and, um, be more rooted in who you are?
Yeah. This is where I feel like the truths of the gospel have like a profound impact on our life here. So in those eating disorder years, I I feel like I just yeah, a lot of my worth was tied to what other people thought about me. And then when I really started to understand, like it's the first lesson you teach as missionaries, right? Is like God is a loving heavenly Father, and just understanding that I was accepted and loved just as I was, and I was created the way that I was. And just knowing that that was good enough, I feel like is so important, first and foremost. And then this has been maybe something more recently that I'm learning, and that is like the differences of males and females. Again, physically, like we're now starting to differentiate science for females and males, but even like spiritually, we have been created with different and equal but unique roles. And so there's some of the things that I guess I'll just share that I've been really fascinated by lately. And I think in the social media space, you'll hear about it sometimes as like the masculine energy and the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it can get a little woo woo and you can easily go off the guardrails of some of this. But I think in truth, and like what we're taught in the gospel, obviously there is a heavenly mother. Like, she's there. We know she's there. She's not as outward facing. And I feel like as females, like we are more internal, emotional beings. So, I don't know if you're familiar with Megan Farner. She has a book, Consider Yourself as Eve, which I have totally love her. She also has a podcast, great. But shout out to Megan. Her book in the book, Consider Yourself as Eve. I think it's done in a very tasteful gospel light of just
Mm-hmm.
these differences between males and females. So
Cool.
men are more structured and organized and like outward facing, whereas females, again, it's more, maybe we're a little bit more loose and flowy and inward facing. And so again, I think just like accepting those differences as females. And I think we feel more in alignment as a female when our behaviors match with like our true divine female nature. So, and motherhood is there's some nuance here, right? Not everybody is able to bear children, but
Mm-hmm.
those of us that can, it's a lot of it's hard, it's painful, it is grueling mentally and emotionally to like raise kids and take care of them day by
Mm-hmm.
day. And I have found myself just frustrated because I feel like the masculine part of me is like, I want to work and I want to make money and I want to like do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like that's a direct conflict with, sometimes being present with my children and being grateful, and that, maybe if I was to stop working, like it would still be enough and it would be okay. So I feel like that's another
Mm-hmm.
thing, is just like accepting and trying to learn what it means for you to be a female and like reach your divine nature as a female. So again, consider
I
yourself.
love that.
I can't even like download all the information from this thought, but
Yeah,
um
I'll put a link to that book in the show notes for sure.
cool. That's a great one too. And you didn't even answer the question, but
No, I like that. Um, yeah, I think that's really cool because like I even learned, quite a long time ago, but when I learned that men's like hormone cycle is 24 hours. And then like the women's obviously is your whole cycle of,
Yeah.
28 to 30 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And just having that realization, that connection that like a man literally can get up and do the exact same thing every day for his entire life because that's what his hormones are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And us as women, like you said, like we really are in just this more flowy, like go with your with your time of the month. And then on top of that, we're having babies, which, like one of my rants is like just to be where you're at. Like if you are postpartum, please just rest and be postpartum if that's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Just like let your body rest. And if you are pregnant, like do what you can, but like again, don't take that crazy masculine energy and try to just like conquer the world while you're pregnant.
Yes.
Just like simmer down and
Yeah.
be pregnant and let yourself do that.
Yeah. Well, and I just remembered one of the other things on this too is that maybe you're familiar with, so our autonomic nervous system has like our sympathetic nervous system and then our parasympathetic, which we know we call or refer to the sympathetic as your fight or flight mode, and then parasympathetic is rest and digest.
Rest and digest. Okay.
So there is some interesting thought kind of going back to like the differences between male and female is that oftentimes as females, when we're doing more masculine things, it kind of drives us to be in this fight or flight mode. So again, you're thinking like providing and working hard and like being on socially, and it will actually change your physiology, right? Like heart rate increases, blood pressure goes up, all these things. And if we're constantly living in that mode, which is a little bit more high stress, right? Over chronically, and if we do that for long periods of time, it will create unwellness, right? And we are finding that stress is kind of at the root of a lot of chronic unwellness today.
Yeah.
So on the other flip side of that, it's like how can we be in that rest and digest parasympathetic mode more? And we've touched on this, but it's like being more present, and it's accepting where you're at and not push. If you've just had a baby, it's not pushing yourself. It's like just, nurse your baby and get sleep or whatever it may be, whatever that looks like. Again, there's a lot of nuance. But I think, just finding peace and not feeling like you have to push it so hard. I also feel like that's where social media has just changed the game, because, now it's this competition of how quickly postpartum can keep people get back into their heavy deadlifts or, running marathons again. And we've really lost, I feel like women are constantly just pushed to be, before it was, thinner, and now it's like stronger, faster, harder. And we're really losing, I don't know, I guess it just muddies the water on what it means to be female a little bit, like in our differences with men. So
yeah, I love that. That's a great answer to that question, because I wouldn't have, that wouldn't have been where I would first go to. But I love that advice of just, to start with your female side and figure out what that looks like for you. And, just like that divine identity. When I think about confidence, I would say that over the years, obviously I have my insecurities, but over the years I've felt like, fairly confident and at peace with who I am. And I always think back to Young Women's, like it just gave me just this amazing base, just learning about divine nature and just having just a handful of specific lessons, that were just about, just like you said, what we were created for, that we were each created individually, and how much God loves us. And I think that when you truly understand those principles of the gospel, that, God is a loving Heavenly Father and He loves you and everyone. Like if you really, truly can get to a point where you believe that, it can make all the difference in your confidence for sure.
I agree. And what is the old theme was, we are daughters of a loving Heavenly Father, and now it's changed to we are daughters of loving Heavenly Parents and stuff. But again, like the truth is still there. I think our understanding of that is continually growing as truth is unveiled.
Yeah.
But yeah, that divine nature and individual worth and all of those things, like, yeah, I feel like being in the Young Women program was such a foundational piece, and like it has just been powerful. I feel like, yeah, you just keep coming back to true principles, and you can always veer. Like your life can take some side roads,
For
but
sure.
at the end of the day, you just come back to those true principles. So
Yeah, and that's so fascinating about this is just all a new concept for me. That's so interesting hearing about how, now women are expected to be stronger and be harder, like and I loved what you said about how naturally we kind of go into fight or flight if we're doing more masculine things or running from that masculine energy. And yeah, so true. This is why I love wearing dresses and baking pies. That's why it feels right for me, is because I am in so much fight or flight right now. And so I think that my body's just like, you just hang out in the kitchen and bake this pie with your dress on, lady, and settle down.
Yeah, which I feel like, unfortunately, like that view of a woman has also kind of been under attack too. Like there's
For sure.
I wouldn't necessarily associate as like a feminist, but I also am like, girl power too. But I do feel like there is this movement to try to get women to be equal and the same as men.
The same. Yeah.
And I feel like we've always been equal, but we should not be the same.
Yeah.
And can I share one of my favorite quotes?
Please do.
So maybe you'll remember this. And if I can find it really quick. Back in April 2020, around Easter time, there was a quote that kind of went viral. And she titles it "God Comes to Women." Maybe you'll recall this, but I'll just read what she says, because this has been, I don't know, this always comes to my mind like multiple times a year. So she says, "Have you ever noticed how in the scriptures men are always going up into the mountains to commune with God? Yet in the scriptures we hardly ever hear of women going to the mountains. And we know why, right? Because the women were too busy keeping life going. They couldn't abandon babies, meals, homes, fires, gardens, and 1,000 responsibilities to make the climb into the mountains." I was complaining about this to a friend the other day, saying that even as a modern woman, I feel like I'm never free enough from my responsibilities, never in a quiet enough or holy enough spot to have the type of communion I want with God. Her response floored me. This is why God comes to women. Men have to climb the mountain to meet God, but God comes to women where they are. I have been pondering on her words for weeks and have searched my scriptures to see that what she said is true. God does indeed come to women where they are. When they are doing their ordinary everyday work, he meets them at the wells where they draw water for their families in their homes, in their kitchens, in their gardens. He comes to them as they sit beside sick beds, as they give birth, care for the elderly, and perform necessary mourning and burial rites. Even the women at the empty tomb who were the first to witness Christ's resurrection were only there because they were doing the womanly chore of properly preparing Christ's body for burial. In this seemingly mundane and ordinary task, these women found themselves face to face with divinity. So, if, like me, you ever start to bemoan the fact that you don't have as much time to spend in the mountains with God as you would like, remember, God comes to women. He knows where we are and the burdens we carry. He sees us, and if we open our eyes and hearts, we will see him even in the most ordinary places and in the most ordinary things. So that's by Heather Farrell. But that has changed. It's kind of changed the pressure that I put on myself as a young mom. There are a million tasks that I could and I feel pressured from the world to do. Feel pressured to do the strength training, do the cardio, do the meal prepping, do the scripture reading, do the temple attendance, do the calling, and in the hope that, you'll be enough. And I feel like it really is just this, I don't know, I feel God's presence. And if I just from letting myself feel it and be open to it, Like he's totally there, and he comes to us as moms when we're doing the mundane, ordinary tasks. So anyways, I just love that quote.
That's beautiful. I love what you just said right there, that like God will come to you as you're open to it. Like that was all it took, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And I 100% agree that it is just this mindset shift of just like, okay, like God is with me while I'm cleaning the dishes and while I'm nursing a baby and, just all the little laundry, all the little things you're doing again. And I have this podcast obviously, and I talk to him, and one of the questions I love to ask is like, how are you making God a priority? Like what does your relationship look like? Um, and it's just what you're saying. Like it literally is just time and time again, they just say like, oh, it's just praying while I'm doing this and thinking of him while I'm doing this, turning on um gospel music or turning on conference talk, or like nobody has said, literally no one has said, I wake up at 5 a.m and read my scriptures for an hour.
Yes.
Like no one has said that yet. And
No.
that's kind of my ideal, and I'm hoping to get there someday, but maybe I never will, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah. And
But
just
like,
accept that he's going to come to you, even,
yeah.
if you can't have all the time to do that other stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean like we're not having experiences with him. So I love that it really is just this little switch. A while back, this was probably like a year ago or more, but I had listened to a talk with it was a fireside for the young adults with Wendy Nelson and the prophet. Her whole talk was based on what would a holy person do? And I love that question. That's just one question that has kind of helped me get into that mindset of allowing God into my everyday and to all the mundane things I'm doing. Just asking myself that question of just like, okay, how would a holy person do this? Because I think just what you're saying, that it's just all about choosing to be open to God's presence, his revelations and his love, and just letting him in, because he's there for every single one of us.
Yeah. Well, and can I share another experience briefly?
Please do.
So, probably one of the most powerful spiritual experiences I've had lately was being very fresh. First, it started just being overwhelmed, overstimulated. Had been taking care of kids, all week, and I think it was like finally a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, and I just begged my husband to just like let me go for a walk so I can just get some peace and quiet. And I literally
Mhm.
just like go out to the road on my street, and I just start walking. And if you live in Washington County, like we get some wind down here and it can get
Mhm.
pretty breezy, flowy.
Mhm.
And I was just on my walk, and I didn't have any headphones. Like I just knew I needed it to just like be quiet. It just needed to
Mhm.
be quiet. So I'm walking, and the wind is blowing at my back like so hard, but the sun is out. And so like at my back, I'm feeling the wind, and at my
Mhm.
face, I'm feeling the sun. And I'm just walking, and it's kind of this like cathartic, like left brain, right brain. And I'm just walking, and again, the wind is blowing, the sun is shining on me, and I just am kind of praying out loud, and just this like plea to God to blow away worry and blow away stress and blow away sin and impurity and envy, jealousy, just like blow it all away,
Mhm.
and then just help me absorb light and goodness and godliness. And
Mhm.
as I just keep walking, it's just my steps and then the sensations of the wind and the sun. I was like overcome with the presence of God, really, and just like, Lydia, I'm here, and like you're doing enough. And um, it was just this really, again, like cathartic moment. And I felt God telling me, like, there's just so much expansiveness in my love and acceptance for you. And it was kind of a little nudge to like stop putting God in a box and stop limiting God's love and power. Um, and just trust that it's there and that he's totally accepting everything that I'm doing. And again, coming back to just like the health piece of this, I feel like in those moments, it's clear as day what I need to be doing as a human to be more whole and healthy. And it is light and goodness, and it's love and acceptance for myself and for the people around me. And as I feel like I am living in God's love and loving the people around me and loving myself, the healthy eating and the movement out of joy and out of respect for my body, it just comes. It just comes. So, anyways, that was
Oh,
probably it was a powerful moment for me.
that's amazing. That was really beautiful, and I loved the wind and the light, and I think we've all been in similar scenarios and can like relate to how powerful that was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is so neat. And um, yeah, I love the turn that this has taken. I wasn't expecting today to be so much like on the emotional side. And I'm so glad that um, you spoke to that a lot, because I think we get a lot, like we were talking about in the beginning, we get a lot of messages about the physical side and what we can do physically. And um, I think it's really beautiful what you just said, that as we figure out the emotional side and draw closer to God, He really does open our eyes to the physical of what we need to change and what we need to be doing. And as you become more aware of who you are and whose you are, then you really do recognize that it is a beautiful privilege to take care of these physical bodies that we have been blessed with. And just I loved what you said about movement out of joy. Meg Miles, that's one reason I have loved doing her exercise videos, as well as that, she's very encouraging in that way. And she talks all the time about um, just moving out of the privilege that it is to move. And
Yeah.
um, so I love that. I think that when we can start nourishing and caring for our bodies and being grateful for what they can do, rather than trying to punish them to look a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean, easier said than done because of all the messages that we're receiving. But if you can do that, that's where all the joy and the peace and the happiness comes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I do feel like, I mean, God has given us like the word of wisdom, and I feel like, again, has given us science, and the information is out there, and he's given us the food, when we can just stay close to God and the food that God put on the earth, and again move our bodies in the way that makes us happy. Like, it all comes together. So I feel like
Yeah.
we very much overcomplicate things that just don't need to be overcomplicated. And I do feel like there is Satan knows how powerful we are as women and how powerful we can be. And so, like, yeah, we're under attack, and our, again, that divine nature is under attack, and our role and whose we are. I love that you said that, who we are and whose we are. Um so yeah,
Yeah.
amen, Layna. Amen.
Yeah. Amen. Rah, rah. That
Let's go.
was great. Oh, I love that you brought up to moving in a way that like you enjoy and is fun for you. And this is one of my rants that I'm going to go off on for a second,
Go off.
because I like there are so many women who are like not exercising, and then they're like, I'm gonna go run, like I need to be a runner. I'm like, do not go be a runner. That's
Yeah.
like the worst thing you could go do, or like whose husbands are like these big macho muscly guys, and then like they're like, oh, I need to lift weights with him, but they hate lifting weights. And I'm like,
Yeah.
don't lift weights then, like please just like if you want to dance, or
Dance.
like just walk, or like there's so many options. Like I just played pickleball the other day. It was like the second time I've ever played, and I was like, this is actually super fun. Like just try something, try whatever, and don't get stuck on like I need to do running or I need to do weightlifting if you're not enjoying them, because I think physical movement is a blessing to be able to do, and just do something that you actually like, please.
Yes. Well, and to that point too, like in the health sciences, we know you should not be inactive, right? Like it is
Yeah.
clear if you think that you're going to be happy and that God wants you, you know, to just like lay on the couch, you're not going to be happy. Like we're given these gifts and these bodies to move. But again, our beliefs matter. And so like you're spot on, like find the thing that makes you happy. And like
And
if you
maybe it's
can,
changing depending on where you're at too. What
yes,
season
yes.
you're in.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about this with my clients too. Like if you're an introvert versus an extrovert, like maybe
Mhm.
the gym is not where you need to be. Maybe you do need to be in
Yes.
more isolation out in
I
nature
would
or
hate the
something.
gym.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I'm a personal trainer and I teach, you know, I will write exercise programs, but I hate the gym.
Yeah.
And I know that some people love it and I'm like, "Yes, that's perfect for you if you love it." But if you don't love it, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I think with like strength training, yes, there is some benefit to working your muscles differently than like aerobic cardio fitness. But does it
Definitely.
have to be lifting weights or doing machines in the gym? No. Can it be, you know, just at the park? My neighbors probably think I'm wild sometimes, but just at the park playing with my kids, I'm
I'm
just like doing
wild.
step ups on the bench or whatever.
Yes.
And that's
But
my favorite.
that's what I feel like physical like health is in motherhood. Like
Yes, it is.
90% of the time I'm in my pajamas. When I went to play pickleball the other night, it was my husband and I, we were just going on a date and I put on my exercise clothes and all my girls were like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" My little
Yeah.
baby was like, "Are you going swimming?"
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
I was
so
like,
cute.
I guess it has been a while since I've like put on my exercise clothes because
Yeah.
lately it's just been, like a walk in regular clothes and then my pajamas while I'm throwing some weights around a little bit.
Yes. No, and I love that because if that is what we saw on social media more, I think more people would think, "Oh, I can do this." Because again,
Yes.
the fitness influencers and the people who have a big following, they're usually in these like expensive matching sets
Yes.
in a bougie gym and, you know, they've showered, their makeup, full face of makeup, hair
Yes.
or whatever, and it's like whose reality is that? So,
Yes,
very
you posted a cute video. I'll have to find it and post it too, but you did this cute reel of you just like dancing around in your house and
and
just
that is
holding
the
your
norm.
baby and doing some squats
Yes,
and stuff.
that
Like
is the norm.
that counts.
And it doesn't get views and it doesn't like that's not going to go viral and I
It's
don't
not
care.
sexy.
No, it's not sexy, but that's the reality.
Yes.
And very much it's just like I've rolled out of bed and my hair might still be in like a sloppy ponytail from sleeping and I might have some residual mascara or whatever. Um and I'm in my sweats and I'm just in my living room barefoot, put Spotify on the TV and let's go. So
Yes.
I feel like that is the norm. And so if that was what we saw on social media more often, again, I feel like it would lessen the barrier to entry
Yes.
for so many people who just don't know what counts as fitness and as
Yes.
movement. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so fascinating that you bring that up because even like I find myself these last few weeks I've been I'm generally I would say very consistent with my exercise, but
Mhm.
I've been just like doing this program and been very consistent with it and very consistent with my walks probably the last like month or so. And even still I find myself feeling like it's not counting because
Mm,
I'm not getting on a major sweat or anything because right now, I'm trying to like calm my hormones down and get my
yeah.
cortisol to be way lower.
Yep.
And so like I definitely have to kind of check myself and be like, no, I actually am exercising. And I've lost and the fascinating thing, like just what you're talking about was like when you bring it all together and when you use the actual information, like I've lost my weight and now I'm finally back to where I was pre-pregnancy and like my physical body is changing um more than it was when I was doing more of like the masculine energy type
Yes.
things.
Yep.
So it's
And I see
fascinating.
this with a lot of my clients too. It's
I'm
like
sure you do.
sometimes just calming down and doing the stuff that makes you happy and eating the food, and whatever makes you happy within reason too. Like, again, there's nuance there.
Yeah.
I
I
feel like
mean,
that.
chocolate chip cookies made me really happy, but
Yeah, and they could still be included, but like if you're only eating
maybe not
chocolate chip cookies,
all.
yeah, all the
Yes.
time. So it is funny because I'll see this where people, I have visually seen this alignment start to happen, and then it's like the physical
Close.
stuff just follows.
Yeah.
So
So cool.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's it
I
on
love
that.
that. I love that. That was all so fabulous. Um, do you have another quote, or was that quote
That
the one
that
that
was
you were going to
that
share?
was the quote. That was the
Okay,
quote.
perfect.
Yep.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure we didn't leave out another good quote.
That was the one. And that, again, it just like, it always comes to me and reminds me I'm doing enough. I don't have to be doing well. And not to diss on anything in the church, but again, I feel like sometimes we, even at the Relief Society and the Relief Society lessons, like sometimes you'll
Mhm,
have women teaching the lesson who are in a different phase of life, giving
mhm.
the reminders to go to the temple and say your prayers every day and read your scriptures every day and, magnify your calling and doing your ministering. That sometimes I've been in those lessons and be like, holy cow, I just like feel overwhelmed.
Yep.
And so knowing like the connection with God and just being reminded that, and I think one of your questions was like, how do you feel God or spending time with God or something? And it is those just like calm moments with my kids. I'll feel a little smile down from heaven or like a little tap on the shoulder or whatever, just when I'm loving and being present with my kids, or yeah, just sitting in like solitude and thinking about God. So
Mhm,
I think that all those things that we're reminded about in church are helpful as long as they're helpful, right?
mhm.
And that they're not causing more stress
Yes.
or more obligation, more pressure, higher expectations. So yeah, shout out to all the
Yes.
women in church who are trying to find that balance there too.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. That relationship is so interesting of, we do have these responsibilities within the church, but what are they really there for? Well, they're there to help us love ourselves and love others and love God, right? And and just like you said, if you're not doing it because of that love, then it is very overwhelming and um just becomes this big to do.
Yeah. And
It's tricky.
I have seen very stressed Relief Society presidents and young women presidents and who are now, investing in their health. And it's like, I just can't figure this out. I'm like, well, we might need, I mean, it's hard and it's, you don't want to
Well, you
tell
were
anybody.
baking cookies for
For
everybody every week
everybody.
and
Yeah.
creating these masterful lessons.
And literally putting so much like of other people's stress on yourself too. So
Yep.
I just can't imagine that's what God has expected of us,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
so again, I think some of that is driven by maybe some of these masculine beliefs are just like we need to just go hard and work hard and serve everyone and put others' needs above our own or whatever it may be. Like
Hmm.
I just I've seen the detriment of it. So again, but there's nuance. So there is this beautiful balance of
Yeah.
coming closer to God and serving the people around you with while keeping yourself well and whole.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I love that because then you go too far the other way. You're spending 4 or 5 hours doing your self care every day, and
mhm.
maybe that's not quite where God needs you either.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's just so interesting. I think that's why it's just so important to maintain that relationship with God and figure out what He needs you to be doing, because I've definitely felt in my life little nudges, keep me where I need to be going, and
Yeah. Yep.
not getting too far left or right. And
Mhm.
it's just amazing to feel His love and care and direction and recognize how proud of us He really is. Like I I I agree with you that like there's definitely like culturally in the church this like, do everything, be everything idea, and kind of go over the top with different things. I felt that when I was primary president, I honestly kept it so simple. Like that's just like my personality is like try to do things simple. And um like I definitely felt like some guilt from that of just like, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough, because like I'm not doing all these elaborate things. Like I feel like we were just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
um but when I would pray, and when you really focus on your relationship with God, he's just like just so loving and accepting of right where you're at, and he knew that like with where I was with my children and what we were working on in our home, that the bare minimum was exactly what he needed, and that like I really don't feel like I did a ton as primary president, but like I loved those little kids and God gave me this like gift to know everybody's name. And like that was all I gave to them, is just like I knew their name, and every single week I stood by the door and said their name as they came in and went out. And like it's so funny, like now as primary presidents, you don't do like the sharing time, and so you're basically just conducting
Yeah.
primary and just seeing the kids here and there, and you're just back end making sure everybody's doing their stuff.
Mhm.
Like there's really not a whole lot to it anymore now
Yeah.
that you're not doing the sharing time. So I think that's where part of like my guilt came in, was just like are we doing enough here? But like like God just, he's just so aware of right where we are, and he knows what you can handle and what you can't handle, and I
Yeah.
just love it.
When I feel like he'll correct your false beliefs about yourself, or this like false identity that you think you need to have. So again, I'm sure there's a part of you and most of us who um are like, the belief is like, I have it together and I'm good at whatever I do and I'm going to give a full effort, and whatever that identity thing is. And God, kind of going back to that wind and sun thing, it's like he can blow away the false obligations, the false expectations, the false beliefs about yourself that are adding more pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and again feeling like you're not doing enough. Like he can blow those things away and then grant you the love and acceptance that is true and real. And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess the encouragement there too is anybody who is feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and it's taking a toll on your physical health, like let God blow away the pressure and
Mm-hmm.
all those things that are kind of impeding your ability to see yourself as you really are.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
love that. Okay, that's our challenge for everybody. We all need to go lay in our beds and visualize the blowing and the sun. I
Yeah.
really think that like meditating on that for a few
Good.
minutes is going to be really beneficial for all of
Yeah.
us, and just like allow yourself to feel God's love for you.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Love it.
Okay. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Lydia, for taking the time out of your day, your very busy
Yeah.
day,
It's all
of
right.
working and being a mom, to chat with us and share of your goodness and light. That was such a powerful message that you gave to us today, and I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you. Thanks for doing this, Layna. You're the best.